to the first ever Kirk and Carver podcast. He is Carver, and I'm Kirk. What up, Carver?
Hey, man. You ready for this?
Welcome to episode 1.
It's pretty remarkable to believe that after these past 4 weeks, 1 week of just talking about it, and then 3 weeks of recording takes, we're here.
It's really been kind of like if you step back and look at that 4-week month period of time, it seems like an eternity ago, doesn't it?
It literally does.
From the very first time we sat down at Coco's Lake Forest, thank you, by the way. Nice plug to Lake Forest Coco's.
Yeah.
To where we are today, like a lot has transpired. A lot of trial by fire has occurred.
Oh, yeah.
We had this massive setup to anyone that has seen the studio before to now just simply one mic, 2 cell phones, an iPad Pro, a MacBook Pro. A lot has transpired. And 2 mugs. 2 mugs, 2 pens, 2 sheets of paper because we still write on stone tablets.
Yeah.
Because we're old school.
It's I had to describe it to people, like, what this whole process has been like. I got asked a couple of times, like, so what exactly was this past 4 weeks like? And I'm like, exactly as you said, 4 weeks, wow. And thinking about it, it felt like I was going over the course of almost thinking back to my childhood. It felt like I had to go so far back. But just to see how everything has developed and come together to be this now, right here, it's amazing. It's definitely, I can tell, is something inspired, not random. This was something meant to be, and a long time in the making, and just finally that it all came together it's a rush. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is great. So welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Podcast 1. We now have our widescreen viewing pleasure. We have our in-camera, in-your-face viewing pleasure. And we're here.
We're here.
So
what's the subject for today,
So the
Jeff?
subject matter is, and Carver, thank you for bringing that up.
Yes.
So I thought a lot about how we kind of like dive into what podcast number 1 is and podcast number 2 is. And, ultimately our objective is to share with the world God-fearing topics, addressing the unaddressed. But for our viewing audience to understand who we are, we need to give forth our testimony. And so not only does the Bible and Scripture ask us to come forth and give that testimony, because it is showcasing how God has blessed us through our life and how we've grown.
Yeah.
And ultimately, there's lots of people out in the world that feel that they've done so much wrong or have sinned so much that God would never love them, and it couldn't be further from the truth. So ultimately a testimony is to showcase God has loved and walked with us through all these different trials and tribulations in our life, and for us to then give that back to the world, that not only it's never too late, but you too can get to a greater purpose, or having a purpose on this planet. And so today we're going to give, I'm going to give my testimony today.
Exactly.
Carver, as per usual, will ask hard-hitting questions when the time is right.
Yeah.
And I'll plead ignorance on the ones I don't want to answer. Just kidding.
We're a little late for that now, Jeff. Everything's coming out.
I know. It's all coming out. So that's what we're going to do today. And then next week, Carver, you will give your testimony.
It'll be my turn.
Yeah. And then from there, each week we're going to have a new topic. And each topic we'll really dive in. We'll have scriptures based on why we lean a particular different direction. Right. To correspond back to the biblical word. But for today and next week, it's literally the Kirk and Carver show.
Yeah. And I think there's a thing that I want to just be able to mention to everybody, that, what we're looking to do is do the things that are not popular. They're not going to bring us a huge audience just because we're trying to be fun, or we're trying to be creative and get laughs and just make everybody have this super culturally agreeable time. But we're looking to really, dig into Scripture, dig into our own lives and say, hey, like, what are really men supposed to be in a time where there really is no guidance, right? I mean, like, our culture will tell us 100 different ways to be a man, and maybe one of those has a hint of actual truth to it that is sustainable, right? I mean, this last week was 4th of July, and I mean, that was such a flashback for me from church to what our nation was built on, what we were founded on, the principles, the core values, founding fathers, and just for me to see how much has changed really, like, made my heart, like, be sad and kind of mourn that, but also have hope, you know, that I feel like more than ever, this is such a perfect time for the inception of this show and for it to have come about, because we're really trying to, through our own life stories and our own perspectives, give some guidance. You know, as Jeff was saying, that some of us might not feel like, we might feel like it's too late, or we might not feel like we have a chance, but our testimonies are going to start things off by saying, look, we've been through a ton of situations. And I don't know what his testimony is, but at least I know mine, and I've been through a lot, and I've done some really stupid things. So if I can get to a point where God still loves me and pulled me out of all that and has given me a hope, that hopefully through these first two episodes, you can understand where we've been, where we want to go, and where we want to kind of bring everybody along with us.
Very well said. Amen. Thank you, brother.
You got it. The floor is yours.
So I don't really know how to start off other than just kind of diving into. I was born in a little town called Sonora back in 1982, and if you're doing the math on that, that would make me 39 years of age. So I was born in this little town, Sonora, so it's probably an hour and a half east of Sacramento.
Okay.
And as early as I could recall, obviously I don't remember ages 1 through 4, but as early as I could recall, my parents had told me that I was adopted. And I didn't really know how to feel about that until you get to a certain age and you realize that, oh, my parents didn't have me like all my friends had their parents have them, so to speak. And I remember it was third grade, I think it was third grade, back to school night. And, you know, typically that's the night where your parents finally come to school, they see your artwork, they see your test scores, the teacher gives a little
blurb about you.
Yeah, synopsis on what's transpired in the last, 3 or so months of school. And I remember sitting there with my mom and dad, and I'm looking around the room, and I'm like, all my friends look like their parents. And then I'm looking at my mom and dad, I don't look like my parents.
Oh, wow.
And I remember that kind of like hitting home to me, like, oh yeah, that little thing called adoption. That's what that looks like, kind of a deal.
So it came alive in the third grade for
It was really in the third grade. And that's why I want to preface that as early as I can remember, my mom and dad shared with me that I was adopted. It was never a secret, and I'm grateful for that. But as that kind of seed, starts to grow roots into my mind, you then think, well, Alyssa's mom and dad had Alyssa. My mom and dad didn't have me. So what happened to the mom that did have me?
Okay.
And why didn't she keep me? And then that starts to grow into...
That's a tough question to ask yourself in the third grade.
Very much so. And, I won't say it was the third grade per se of that's when those thought processes began. But as you come into especially middle school where you're more cognitive of who you are and where you're from.
When you're searching for that identity too.
100%. And you just kind of come to a situation, well, I did in middle school, that I was given up. And I was forsaken at the very young age.
So you felt that, like, so you're saying that kind of that seed of abandonment kind of grew?
100%. In fact, this whole testimony principle is based on being abandoned.
That's heavy.
Very heavy. And now, like all things, trials and tribulations is what makes us. And so that was kind of how my childhood began. You fast forward a few years from birth, obviously. I think I was in the second grade, 7 years old, right in that time frame. My parents ended up getting a divorce. And when you talk about a sense of abandonment from birth, and then your dad then all of a sudden departs one day, that then compiles onto that level of abandonment. And I remember the story so vividly. In fact, there's really three. Whenever you have a huge challenging point in your life, you remember where you were, what you were doing. Like everyone remembers 9/11, right?
Yeah, you can also remember the smell of the room that I was in. I remember exactly what it was like that morning.
Very vividly, and our audience, you guys can appreciate this. And I remember on this particular day, I don't know what the day was, I was in second grade, but I remember I was sitting at the top of our staircase, and I could hear my mom and dad arguing in the kitchen. And I'm pointing over here as if you could see the kitchen, but it wasn't. I'm sitting, and I could just hear, their arguments echoing throughout the house. And I just remember as a 7-year-old boy just bawling, knowing that this is not right. Whatever is going on, I don't want my parents to fight. I just want them to love, and so I could be loved on. And you're self-serving when you're 7 years old. And I remember my dad going to the door, and he slammed the door behind him, and then my mom kind of went to the door, and she collapsed on the inside of the door. And I just remember running down, and we just cried, and we just held each other, and it was tough.
Yeah.
And did you
know at that moment what was going on, or just
no,
it was bad?
It was bad. It was all bad. Yeah, and I didn't even know what divorce was. Back to this third grade open house, all my friends, their families were still all married. So I come in, I'm adopted, and my parents are divorced. So my mom was there by herself. My dad was there by himself. I mean, they were standing near each other, but it wasn't like it was a harmonious situation.
Little tension there.
Yeah, some serious tension. So kind of the guiding principle is sense of abandonment. So fast forward to high school. My mom has since remarried a wonderful man by the name of Mike, and he's a subscriber. Thank you, Mr. Perry.
I love you, Mike. You're awesome.
Yep, share the good word, by the way. And as they got married, my mom and I, we lived in this condo in kind of like a hood portion of Sacramento, I will say.
Okay.
And they got married, and then naturally we moved to a nicer suburban area, and it was a house, and it was nice to have my own room. And I mean, I had my own room in the condo, but it wasn't a lot more space.
Did it feel like a return to form to how things were in the second grade, or was it just different but new in your own?
It did feel more normal, but I just had spent the last 8 years of my life, Mom and I exclusively. Okay. So then, we get this house in suburbia, and Mike comes in, who's awesome, and he has 2 children.
Okay.
And one of those children would come every other weekend, as I would go to my dad's house every other weekend. So I would come home, and the weekends that I was with Mom and Mike, my stepbrother would be there. And it wasn't a sense of rejection from my mom, but in some way, immature, deep-rooted way, I almost felt like, being that it wasn't just Mom and I, and it was now Mom with Mike and stepchildren, and now I'm kind of this leftover piece of the puzzle, kind of in this mix here.
That was your perspective on it. I would assume that she just tried to make them feel included, kind of more probably leaning on you to know that you're her favorite, but okay, now I have to show them love too. And
no doubt. And my mom didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
It was just the natural progression of life. I will say, in my immaturity of being in, I think it was the 8th grade at this time.
That's a tough time, man.
Right at 13 years old.
Puberty hitting you like a ton of bricks.
No doubt. Yeah. So, I mean, you have abandonment issues from adoption, abandonment issues from father leaving, and then not necessarily abandonment, but could be perceived as abandonment. Cousin of, yes. Yeah, maybe second cousin, but still, in my immaturity, my mindset, that's almost how I took it. Yeah. So fast forward to high school, I'm so deeply rooted in search of finding connection and a group, a sense of belonging, like a pseudo family within a friend group. And in doing so, as lots of young people without the strong male figure at home day to day. Not saying Mike wasn't the strong male figure, but I had so much of just, it was my mom, and I would, as the man, I got to take care of my mom, and then
right.
like I'm the male figure in the house as a little boy, and so I'm so desperately looking for this family, this sense of belonging, that I got connected with a group that wasn't walking with God or wasn't even close to God. It was the polar opposite of God. And in my mind at the time, I just thought like, yeah, I belong. I'm part of a group.
And
it
what
felt
age group
good.
Was this?
This is high school. So we'll
okay.
say 14, 15, we'll call it 15 through 19, somewhere in this time frame. And in doing so, like, they would accept anyone as long as you were willing to do X, Y, or Z, right? And it wasn't good. And it wasn't as bad as I'm alluding to, but just for the sake of this being on the intraweb, I'm not going to go down this tunnel of all the different things that...
Could you give just a little bit of something to just...
Drinking, smoking, just being a punk.
Okay, punk. I like that.
Being a punk.
That's okay.
And I started working at 15 and a half as early as I could remember, or as early as I could get a job. To the day in the state of California, for people outside of California. You can get your work permit.
Yep.
I don't know what the thing is today, but back then it was 15 and a half on the dot. And my dad, I will never forget this, brought me to this restaurant, and he said, "You're going to go turn in your application." And I was happy to do it.
At that restaurant?
At that restaurant.
Okay. What was the restaurant?
It was Chevy's.
Chevy's?
And I don't know if Chevy's is still around.
Yeah, I've seen Chevy's.
Well, Chevy's is great.
Of course, you worked there.
Yeah, lots of yummy food over the years. And so I met a lot of friends there, and a lot of those friends, especially in the restaurant business, are drinking, smoking, doing extracurricular type stuff. And, so I got kind of rolled into a very adult, not mature, but an adult situation through work. I had my own kind of punk friends back at school. And so I'm getting pulled in these different directions.
Yeah.
You're very impressionable at that age.
Oh, super.
And if you are constantly feeling like you've had abandonment issues throughout your years, you almost become a people pleaser by default because you don't want people to reject you.
Yeah.
And so I remember working at Chevy's, and I would go to these after parties, and I would see people do all sorts of things. And I'm like, I know that's not right, and I know what I'm doing isn't right, but what I'm doing isn't as bad as what they're doing.
Now, was that kind of a first-time experience that you actually wanted to pump the brakes on the stuff you were seeing? Like, it was all of a sudden going too far?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like, drugs is one thing, but then there's big drugs, like...
Yeah.
I'm like, no, I'm not...
So you're starting to hit a wall with just... Your heart's just starting to...
Yeah, you kind of define what lane you want to be in and what lane you most certainly don't want to be in. Right. And it was pretty definitive. That's a lane I did not want to go in.
You found the boundary.
But that said, I was still drinking and smoking and having sex and not doing anything that was uplifting. It was very self-serving and all about my image and making sure these different groups that are in my life found favor in me, so I'm not rejected for sense of abandonment.
Right.
Really getting off my notes here, but this is the way it was supposed to go, apparently. Yeah. And that said, as soon as I graduated high school, so we'll say this is right at 18, maybe second half of 18, I ended up getting a wet and reckless, and that is. It's a little under a DUI, but it's essentially the same thing.
Okay.
I got a wet and reckless, and I had just bought a 2000 Honda Civic in black. I had saved up my money for the down payment. Right. I had, obviously, I'd been working at Chevy, so I had my monthly payment aligned. I had insurance, gas, you name it. Like, it was 100% covered by Jeff Kirk.
Right.
However, at the age of 18, homeboy didn't have no credit.
Oh,
So you can't go buy a new car without any credit.
Right.
Therefore, my mom and stepfather had to co-sign for me.
And they did that?
They did that.
That's nice.
But this Wet and Reckless changed everything.
Did this happen right after you got the car or before you got the car?
After I got the car.
Okay.
So I think I had the car 6 months, I would guess. So we're going to say maybe December of 2000, maybe early 2001, somewhere in that time frame.
Okay.
And as soon as I got the Wet and Reckless, my mom's like, we're co-signed to this car. There's too much liability on our name. You don't deserve a car. And we're pulling the car and we're selling the car.
No way. That's a blow.
Square breathing, Jeff. This was so tough in my life that I got in. I remember I stood up. I've never stood up square to Mike before. And he's like, don't do this, Jeff. And I ended up backing down, but I was so elevated. I was so angry. Because I financially, 100% contribution was through me. And for them to just take it. And it was very challenging. So, long story long, I moved into my aunt's house. And my aunt had no problem with me drinking just as long as I wasn't driving. So then naturally, if I'm getting the behaviors condoned, then it makes it so much easier to, continue to feed this.
So you were ready to square up, but you backed down. But to still kind of resolve that issue, you moved out.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that was my resolve. I think that was immaturity of not working out the situation.
Right.
My aunt would happily take me, and she had an extra room, so I moved down to a little town south of Sacramento called Elk Grove.
Okay.
And I lived with my mom, or with my aunt. My grandfather was nice enough to let me use his car.
Okay.
So I was still able to go to and from work. And so now the one source of security I had in my life was my mom. And now I've just up and abandoned ship from my mom because she took my car away. So now this one sense of security in my life is no longer a piece. And I didn't chat with my mom for 12, maybe even 24 months.
That's a long time.
And that was hard for me. And during that time frame, I was even more open, like diving even further into my friend circles of just, well, if I don't have my mom, I need other people to fill this, this gaping void inside of me. And so I got caught up with that same group of friends in wrong place, wrong time. Ended up getting in a court situation where I had lots of hearings. We never went to trial, but lots of hearings to rectify this wrong place, wrong time thing. And I'll tell you, it went on for about 18 months of these hearings, and
that must have been pretty scary.
Very scary. And you talk about getting scared straight. This was exactly what God put in forth as a wake up call.
How old were you here?
I think I'm 20 years old, give or take. Yeah, right in that time frame.
Okay.
And at this point, my mom and we had resolved issues. Like, I had to go back and just like fall on the sword, essentially. Mom, you're right. Tough love. I get it. Now I need even more help than what I thought I did. So spiraling out of control to full spiral out of control. And it was tough. And each hearing that came up would get pushed and pushed and pushed. But every time I had to take off from work to go to one of these hearings, I was scared. I'm putting on a suit. I'm nervous. We're praying. We're doing X, Y, Z. And it was a scary time.
So you said praying. This is the first time you said you were praying out of this whole kind of like recap and testimony.
Scared straight, Carver.
This was when you were like, okay, if there's a God, I need him. Was this kind of like your...
Yeah, so I kind of didn't share this, but I was saved at the young age of 7, 8 years old, and went to private school through high school. Clearly, that didn't do wonders because I was still very much living in the world.
Yeah.
But I knew at an early age that there was God, and he's there, and he loves us. but I never officially walked with God.
Gotcha. Perfect.
So when, like everyone, lots of folks, when they come to life-challenging situations, the first thing they do is go to God, right?
Oh, yeah. Very common.
And that's what God uses. God doesn't create that negative factor in our life, but he allows it to happen as a wake-up call to where we can come back to the Father, right?
Amen.
So during this process, I definitely, it changed me in a maturity way. And yes, I was praying to God in the court, or we settled out of court, and I ended up doing work project for 6 months. So I mean, it's a very minor thing, but still going through that process, like,
oh my God,
it changed me from the inside out. And not only did it change me from being like this punk kid, it helped mature me to being an adult and now getting more focused on having a job at Chevy's and serving tables and delivering drinks and chips and salsa. That's something, but then getting into a career path, which this whole process began, and it helped me mature into the person that I am today.
Okay.
And if it wasn't for that job right there, I wouldn't be in my current job today.
Really?
So it's unique to see how everything kind of balanced out. And
I think somebody, if anyone's listening to this that's in their early 20s and has a terrible job, I'm going to be speaking on that too, but just realize you're doing this for a reason. Everything you learn, and I'm right, is that kind of what you're saying? Everything you're going to learn in a terrible job,
you got to cut something. You got to cut your teeth somewhere, right? Yeah. And not that the Chevy's was a terrible job, but it's the entry level into a career, right? Yeah. And so
if you're thinking it's terrible, it'll it's an entry level thing.
Right, exactly. And so get through the court case, do picking up trash at light rail stations for like 6 months, every Saturday and Sunday like clockwork, and putting on the orange vest with your trash picker or weed popper. That gets old really quick.
Right.
And especially when, you want to go out and be with your friends and you can't.
How vividly do you remember those moments? It was 6 months of time, but like, can you just, in your head, just rewind and be right there?
Oh,
or is it pretty
easily.
Blurry?
Yeah. So we would meet at one particular light rail station, and then depending on where we were going to go do the work, we'd all collectively hop on the light rail and go down to station 2, 3, 4, whatever. And we'd all get off, and certain people would pick up trash, certain people would fix sprinkler heads, certain people would pick weeds. I think that was kind of the gist of it. Yeah. And I'd met some friends there, but, I kept them really at bay, being that, these are not the, sole source of truth you want to have as friends. But believe it or not, I actually met a good friend, and I was the best man at his wedding one time through this. And both him and we were kind of going through this recalibration of life in this moment that we didn't want to go back to, where we both were. I haven't chatted with him in some years, but he's a good dude, and I appreciated our friendship together. And so fast forward to 2018, I get asked to take a job promotion here in Southern California, which then brings me to move down to Southern California from Sacramento, and starting kind of like a startup business, but backed by a very well-off company. So not worried about going into a startup and does it fail or does it succeed in a matter of 12 months and then you're out of job. Like I knew I was coming into this situation and was going to be protected, and very exciting to come down here. And during that path of like, I always lived away from my folks, but we were always in Sacramento or surrounding neighborhood, right? And finally being away from my parents, like there's a whole nother level of maturity and growth that comes with that.
Yeah.
And it was nice to have it. But at the same token, you want to find ways to establish roots, right?
Yeah.
Family's in Northern California. Right. I now live in Southern California. I'm glossing over a divorce in there, but we could talk about that at a later time. Wanting to establish roots, and so I met a girl, and we're just going to call her Karen for the time being.
Okay.
And Karen and I had a very, I say, tumultuous relationship, very high, low lows, but I loved her, and she loved me, and there was a sense of growing some roots here in Southern California.
So it had its ups and downs, but you felt like ultimately you guys were making steps in the right direction.
Yeah, and I'd say very minute steps in the right direction, and
but it was some kind of consistent growing, at least somewhere.
Yeah,
it's all perspective
to some point, but then it just became this plateau of I can't go further because I feel in the back of my mind something is awry, something is not right, and if I don't want to live like this the rest of my life, how can I move forward? Putting a ring on it if I have this over-alarming sense in the back of my mind.
There were red flags.
That said, her parents and I became very close, and they almost adopted me. Her mom said, her house is my house.
Wow.
And we just were really close, and we would have dialogue, just the two of us or the three of us without Karen involved, and I felt really close to him. So fast forward to December of 2020, so we're not too far off from where we are today, being today's the 5th of July of 2021, in the year of our Lord. Mm-hmm. We just had our final big blow up, Karen and I. And it was right before Christmas, and my plan was, we're in the middle of COVID. I'm going to spend Christmas and New Year's with Karen and family, and I was excited about it. And this sense of family and belonging that I desired so much, and then all of a sudden to have that ripped away, and now here I am. I can't go home to Sacramento, because we're in the middle of COVID and everyone's worried about that. And now I'm like, I have friends here, but they're going to go do things with their family, so. I ended up having a very lonely Christmas here, and I was angry, and I turned to booze. And I remember that Christmas week, we'll call it Christmas Eve through New Year's, of just filling that gaping hole, that void inside me with alcohol.
Yeah. And
it was January 2nd. I woke up and I said, nope, you're not doing this, Kirk.
That didn't work.
You are done doing this.
Yeah.
So my friend Dana, I was telling her that who my pastor was at the time, Rick Warren, and she goes, Rick Warren, that name rings a bell. So she goes to her bookcase and she pulls out this book, Purpose Driven Life. And I go, I need to read this book. And she goes, well, buy it. Ding-a-ling, and let's read it together.
Wow.
And so we ended up reading it together. Well, not together. I would read it, she would read it, and then we'd get on the phone and talk about the event of the message for that day, and how it's giving back, and your purpose in life is sharing God's good work. And because of that, I got adopted. I joined ministry. I started going to Wednesday night church. I was always, since I moved to Southern California, I was consistently every Sunday. And, you just kind of go through these different events, and how transformed my life has been within just this year of 2021 of once you follow God's will. And I think we said this last week, when you're walking with God, how all of a sudden the lights just turn green.
Yeah.
And you just feel like everything is going the right way. Not that there isn't going to still continue to be trials and tribulations, but
Satan's pissed. But you're going. You're moving.
And he's going to shoot some fiery darts at you. But and because of just following God's path, I found what I know is the love of my life. I've met Carver, and we actually met through Motel Trip, and here we are. We're now doing our podcast, which is absolutely awesome. Yeah. So excited to be here. Things at work are doing very well, and I just couldn't be happier. And I guess the overarching message of giving my testimony today is we've all sinned. Moses committed murder, and yet he's renowned as, so high up within Scripture. And we all are sinners, and we all fall short of the glory of God. But it's not where we've come or what skeletons we're trying to hide from. Our past is who we are. And if we allow that past to control us and let the devil speak doubt into your mind that God will not love you, then we're not giving God the true ability that he has. And that ability is forgiveness. And so no matter how I look at my life, and I used to actually be angry of all the different things that had transpired in my life, but when I look back at it today, I look at it and I go, if it wasn't for these trials and tribulations, I wouldn't be the strong man that I am today.
So good.
And I'm confident in who I am as a God-fearing man. And I just want to, share with our audience and share with you that no matter what comes our way, it's not how we handled it, but it's what we do in the future. And now I'm such a firm believer on living God's will is the best and the only way to live.
Right.
And I'm just grateful to have this opportunity to be able to share. And, if this is helpful for anyone out there, please like and share. But by all means, give us comments, give us feedback.
Yeah.
If you have personal struggles anyone is dealing with, by all means, we would be happy to connect offline. It doesn't need to be, in a, World Wide Web type setting, but we're here to give mentorship or counselship, and not saying that we have all the answers, but just sharing what you're going through, it could be just the release you need of holding on to whatever pain you're holding on to.
Yeah. And I know that, I think one thing too that I want to add to that is if you hear us talk about something that you want to know more about, you can always send us a message. It doesn't necessarily have to be a public comment. You could send us a direct message, and that could be something that we could address with you. Like if there's something you heard that is just, again, you want to know more about or dig into it a little more, that's a great opportunity for you to reach out to us to just get a little more one-on-one time with either one of us about it. I know that, hearing all of this from you is, it's opened my eyes a lot to just, see what you've gone through. And, my testimony is similar in the sense that a lot of the revival I had was pretty recent. And just to look at, it seems like you tried very hard to make success happen. But until you just shed all of those layers off and finally said, okay, God, let's go. Yeah. Then everything opens up, and it opens up all at once. Yeah.
Most definitely. Any final thoughts before we land the plane? We're vastly over our timeline here.
I have a final thought.
Yes.
So when you, and it's kind of just more off, it's not specifically on your testimony, but when you moved to, so you moved to OC, right? So what was your, you're here for a month or two. What was your thoughts about it? What was...
just a Northern California to Southern California perspective.
Yes.
Bingo.
We have quite a rivalry down here with you guys up north.
I'm going to be 100% honest, and I'll tell a very quick story as we land the plane here. Especially, I don't know, could have been just Southern California in general.
Okay.
Northern Californians are typically more inviting. They're more open. They're more willing to have dialogue.
Okay.
For instance, in Southern California, I could be in an elevator, which my building has multiple elevators, compared to my apartment in Sacramento, which only had one elevator. So I would see a lot of regular people on a regular basis. And I'd be like, hey, how's your day today? Or hello, what's going on? Great weather. Whatever. Just
chit-chat.
Common elevator etiquette, right? Okay. And here in Southern California, people would be like, yeah, I'm good. Thanks. Dismissed, just very close-minded, not willing to be open or to even really have dialogue. And so I would say, from a perspective standpoint, I'm going, oh, this could be a rough go here in Southern California.
So that was your first impression, is like, wow, you guys are so standoffish.
Standoffish, yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what's funny is I've always been a super outgoing person, so I can definitely agree with that. I felt like it was always hard to get the foot in the door to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
I can agree with that. Yeah, that's true.
Well, we hope you guys at least liked the first go, podcast numero uno. So if you find this helpful, please subscribe, share with your friends and family. It doesn't, it takes you 4 seconds to do it, but means a great deal for us to just hit that thumbs up button. So he's Carver, I'm Kirk, and we out!
Peace.